Hello everyone and welcome back! Vasco here from the Angular University. We are going to refactor this course detail top level component, so it's the component that gets displayed here. And instead of making it a smart component, so the component knows how to fetch the data from the service layer, we are going to instead make it a plain container component. So this component will no longer be responsible for fetching the data from the backend. It will also not have the application services injected. It will simply inject the route, the activated route. And let's see what we can do with it to retrieve the data. So as we have seen, the data will now be returned to us by the data resolver. So the data resolver, upon route transition from the home screen into the course detail screen, is going to load this data tuple. This observable will emit the data tuple as it's loaded from the backend, and that is going to be made available here at the level of this component via the route. So we have here a parameter. If we do this.route, we have here a data parameter at the level of the route, which is itself an observable. So this is how the data is going to be consumed later at the level of the container component, the course detail component. Right now, let's implement first the course detail resolver. The first thing that we are going to do to implement our resolver is to inject here at the level of the constructor the courses service. With the service in place, we can now use it to implement here the resolve method. So this method is going to start by retrieving the course by URL, then it's going to keep the course and it's going to do a second request to find the lessons for the course. Once the lessons for the course return, we are going to emit a tuple and we're going to return it here as the output of the resolver. So the router will wait for this observable to emit its first value and then complete, and then it's going to trigger the transition. The course detail will then have access to the data via the data observable. So let's start implementing here this logic. We are going to use the courses service and we are going to call the method findCourse by URL. What we need now is the URL of the course that we want to load from the backend. And we have it here at the level of the router snapshot. So the router snapshot has here a property called parameters. This will contain, if we go back here to the router config, all the parameters that were passed in during this router transition. Namely here, the ID parameter will contain the course URL. In order to access the course URL, we simply use here the array syntax notation for accessing the ID property of the router parameters. But we cannot return this as the output of this resolve method, because this is returning an observable of course, and we need an observable of this tuple here. So here is what we need to do. We need to call switchMap, and the switchMap operator is going to take the value that was emitted by this observable, so it's going to wait for the first value to be emitted, and then it's going to switch to a new observable. So here in this function we need to return the observable that we are switching into. So what observable are we going to switch into? We are going to trigger a new request to the backend, again using the courses service. And this time we are going to find the lessons for a given course. So here we need to pass in here the course ID, which is available here at the level of this property. Now, as we can see, this would still not work because we are returning an observable of lesson array and not an observable of this tuple type here. So what we need to do is to emit an observable that combines the result of this observable here, which will emit a course, with the result of this observable here, which will emit a list of lessons. So in order to combine the source observable and the switch to observable results, switchMap provides here a second argument that we are going to be using. So this will take a function. The first argument of the function is the output of the first observable, so it's the output of this observable here, which is the course. And the second parameter is the output of the second observable, which is the list of lessons, and we are simply going to call it lessons. This function is then going to combine the two results and it's going to emit a tuple type. So the first value of the tuple is going to be the course and the second value of the tuple is going to be the lessons. So as we can see, when we hit Ctrl S, we now have a compiling program. So TypeScript is checking that indeed the output of this observable is emitting a tuple of this particular type, which is the data that is needed by the course detail screen. And with this, we have completed the implementation of the data resolver. Let's now switch back to the course detail component. We are going to refactor it to consume the data. We are going to make it a container component. Let's have a look at it. This is coming right up in the next lesson.